What's up, guys? Hope you all are doing great. In this video, what we're going to be doing right here is we're going to create a chat room using Python. And this is going to be a really basic chat room, but it's going to have all the concept needed to create a chat room. And we'll go through every line of code to actually explain this properly so you can understand this and actually also build it yourself. But before we dive in, we need to gain a conceptual understanding of what a chat room is. A chat room is basically a space for people across the globe to communicate with each other. And in this tutorial, we're going to build a real-time chat app using sockets in Python. So you know what, guys? Let's begin by discussing the whole concept of sockets. A socket is a networking terminology which serves as an intermediate connecting the application layer to the transfer layer. These network sockets are presented in the client side and also the server side. One socket, which could also be called a node, listens on a particular port at an IP. The server forms the listener socket while the client reaches out to the server. Another thing we need to discuss, guys, is the chat room server side socket programming. And what this is basically is that the server accepts connection from the client to establish a network interface. But one thing we need to do is we need to ensure that the client slash user. So what we do is that we will assign a unique IP address to each client. However, many users prefer to be identified by a username. Therefore, we will assign usernames as well. The role of the server is to collect any incoming message and deliver them to the other client. And with these concepts in hand, you know what we can do now? We can start coding the server side. What we need to do next, guys, is that we need to create a server.py. But before we do that, I just open PyCharm. That's the ID I'm using, but you can use whatever ID you want to use. Yeah, and if you're wondering what this is a password generator for all you guys who like using the same password. This will help you out. It's a lifesaver, and you basically can generate strong passwords to make whatever you're using them for more secure. So yeah, I'll leave a card for that, but what we need to do now is we create a new project, and this project I'm going to call it chat room. And yeah, we put it in this window. What we need to do next after creating our project is we need to create our Python file. And in this case, the name of our Python file will be server.py. How we do it is that we go to our project name. In this case, it's chat room. We right click and then you hover on new. And when you hover on new, you click on Python file. And we'll call this server.py. Now we have our Python file. It's called server.py. And I'll just put a comment right here. We import the necessary modules. That's what we do. And the modules we'll be needing for this is we'll need to import socket. We'll also need to import sys or system. And after that, we'll import time too. So these are the three modules we'll need. In the description below, I'll leave a link which will take you to a web page. And in that web page, you'll get a command. You just need to copy the command. And that command is the installation command. When you copy it, all you need to do is go to your terminal right here. You click on your terminal and then you paste the command right here. Click enter and that will install all the modules for you. So just so you know that. But if you already have them installed, you do not need to do this. So let's just talk about the modules we installed right here. We imported the socket library because the Python library contains the necessary function to implement sockets. The sys library provides a module which is responsible for providing data related to the system directory, the functions, and also methods. And the last but not the least, we also installed or imported time. The time module enables us to perform numerous actions about the conversion and also description of time. So that's why we have these three modules imported. Now, as you can see right here in the comments, what we need to do next is we need to create the sockets and also retrieve the host names. Now, the way we do that is we'll say new underscore socket is equal to socket dot socket. In this case, we're calling the function socket And then we'll create another variable called hostname is equal to socket dot get hostname. Get hostname, not get by hostname. Get hostname. What we need to do next is we also need to get our IP address. So we'll say s underscore IP is equal to socket dot get hostname by name, and then we'll put hostname inside here. And right now, after this, we need to actually set our port, and our port will be 8080. Now let me just explain what we did right here. Now what we did right here is that the socket function is a constructor for the socket library to create a socket. Now once the socket is created, we retrieve the local hostname device using the getHostname function, which is again a function of the socket library. And what you should look at is that the getHostname, when sent with hostname as a parameter, retrieves the IP address of the other user, and also this IP is stored in s underscore IP. And we set the port to 8080. And why we used 8080 is because this is the more default free port that most machines use. Now that we've done this, what we need to do next is we need to bind the host and the port. And the way we bind the host and the port is we'll say new socket dot bind. Inside here as this parameter we'll put host name, and we'll also put port because we're binding them together. After that, I want us to actually print as a message binding successful. And then we also print to show you your port name. We'll say this is your port name. This is your IP address, not port name, your IP address. And as you can see, we bind the port and the host together using the bind function, which is invoked on the socket object new socket. Once the binding is successful, it prints binding successful on your console. So that's what we just did right here. What we need to do next, guys, is we need to listen for connections. So I'll just put the comment there. And the way we listen for connections is we'll create a variable called name. I'll set that equal to input. So we'll ask the user to actually enter your name. Or you know what, I'll say enter your nickname. And after that, we'll say new socket dot listen, and we'll put 1 there. Now look, guys, what we did right here is that we used the listen function, which takes one argument, namely the number of connections. This parameter can be only whole numbers such as 1, 2, 3. So you can't use decimals for this, just so you know that. Now after we've done this, what we need to do next is we need to start accepting incoming connections. And how we accept incoming connections, we'll say con, and put a comma here and say add, set that equal to new socket dot accept. And when we do that, we'll print to the console, because you need to make your projects interactive, and the best way to make them interactive is actually printing what's happening. So we say received connection from, and we'll say add, and we use this right here, the square brackets, and we put 0. After that, we'll print we'll say connection established. So what we'll put here is we'll say connect Wow, my spelling. We'll say connect. Wow, I can't spell connect. Connected from, and we'll put add 0 right there. So let me just explain what we did right here. The first variable, which is con, is connected to the socket, and the second variable, which is add, is assigned to the IP address of the client. So hopefully you understand that. And next, what we do is we need to actually start storing incoming connection data. So the way we do that, we'll create a variable called client, and we'll set that equal to con dot this rec receive. This is like short for receive. And we'll put 1240, 1024 dot, and then we use the code. Now, when we've done that, we'll print to the console. We'll say client plus, put a message right there. We say has connected. Another thing we'll do is we'll say con dot send, and what we're sending is the name dot encode. Now look guys, what we did right here is that we used the details of the incoming connection and we stored them in the client name variable, and then that client name variable can also be a maximum of 1024 bytes, and this is encoded on the server and then prints the message that it has been connected. And what the server does is that it sends the host name after all this has happened. So finally, for our server side, what we need to do next is that we need to actually deliver the messages. So where we do that, we'll use a while loop. So say while true, what we want to happen is we want message, create a variable called message, and that will take in input. So whatever message you do, and what we'll do is that we'll make this be me. So when you're typing, it's going to show me on your side. So then you put your input. And when you do that, what we'll do is we'll say con.send. And what we'll send is we'll send message, but we need to encode it first. And after that, we'll say message is equal to con dot receive 1024. Now, when we've done this, we'll say message again is equal to message dot decode. And after that, we'll print on the console. We'll say client side, we'll say client. No, we'll print the client. So say client, and then this will be in string form. And then we'll add the message itself. Now look guys, what basically happens here is that the user enters the message, and this message is encoded using the encode function, and then it's sent across through the socket. And this message is sent through the send function, which is invoked on the connection object created during the invocation of accept function, then displays message has been sent. And then the incoming message is received using the recv function of the con object, which can also receive up to 1024 bytes of information. The message is decoded on the server side using the decode function. So that's all we did right here. Finally, guys, we're done with the server side. What we need to do next is we need to create a client side. And the first thing we do when we want to create a client side is that we actually have to create another Python file. And the Python file, we'll call it client.py. So let's do that right now. We go to our project, and on our project, we right click, we hover on new, and then we click on Python file. Then we'll call this client.py. So right now we have our client.py. So you know what? Let's start coding. And what we'll do for the client side at the beginning is going to be very similar with the server side. So I'll just go right here. We'll import all this. We'll import the same modules that we use for the server side. We do the same for the client side. Now look guys, what we'll do next is we'll create the socket and also start accepting user input hostname. So what we'll do is I'll just put a comment right here. And the way we'll do that guys is that we'll create a variable called socket underscore server. I'll set this equal to socket dot socket like this. Now after we've done that, we'll say server host underscore host. Create another variable, we'll set it to socket dot get host name. And what we'll do next is that we'll create a variable called IP. We'll set that equal to socket dot get IP, get host by name. So what you need to understand right here is that this port right here has to be identical with the port we have on the server side, which is this right here. So they both have to be the same. And in this case, we're using 8080. So look guys, what we're going to do next, we're going to start connecting to the server. The way we do that is we'll print to the console, we'll say, this is your IP address. After that, we'll say server host is equal to input. We take user input. So what we're going to tell the user is to enter your friends. And say enter your friend's IP address. And then we'll create another variable called name and we set name to input. So we say enter friend's name. And after that, what we'll do next is we'll say socket server, socket underscore server dot connect, and we'll connect to the server host. And also we'll connect to S port, which is this right here. Now let me explain what happened right here. The details of the server, which is friend, is entered first, and you need to note that it is important to enter the exact IP address, otherwise the communication will fail. And what happens next is that the host name of the server and the port are bounded together in a C way and also connected to the socket. So that's what we did right here. Oh, and I spelled friends correct wrong. Friends, friend, yeah. You can say nickname instead of name. So finally, we're almost there, guys. Finally, what we do next is we need to retrieve the message from the server. And the way we do that is we'll say socket.server.send. We'll put name.encode. And then we'll say server underscore name is equal to socket dot server. No, we'll say socket underscore server dot receive. I would say 1024. I would say server name is equal to server name dot decode. Now what we do next is we're going to print server underscore name. And after that, we'll say has joined. Next, what we do is that we'll say we use a while true. What we want to happen is that message is equal to socket server dot receive 1024 dot decode. What we do next is that we're going to print the server name. Then we're going to add this right here, a colon, and then after that we'll add the message. And then we say message is equal to the input. And in this case, because whoever's terminal it is going to show me. And then you can write your message after that. And finally, we'll say socket server dot send. And we'll put message dot encode. So yeah, guys, this is basically it. But before we actually run it, let me just explain what happened here. So look, guys, what we did right here is that to receive messages, the socket invokes the receive function to accept 1024 of data. And guys, this is stored in the message object and decoded using the decode function. And this message is then printed with the host name of the server and the message is received. So hopefully you understand what we just did right here. Now let's actually run this. And the way we'll run it is that we'll go to our server and then we'll run our server. Yeah, so right here, just this is an error. This should be double. So we should have actually right here, we should have a double. So it's like this. So double brackets. And now we run it again. Now you can see right here what it shows is it says binding successful. This is your IP and it shows you my IP. In your case, it's going to show you your IP. And after that, it says enter your nickname. So I'll put Sam Codes. What we need to do next is we need to go to the client and we run the client. Okay, we have an error in the client. Yeah, so the error is that we need to put server host right here. So yeah, guys, you can see right here, we needed to put server host. So make sure you put server host right here so you don't get an error. So we'll run this again. Run the server again. It says enter your friend's IP address. Oh, well, let me stop everything. Now we run the server again. You put your nickname, Sam Codes, and then we go to the client and we run the client. And it says, the first thing it says is enter your friend's IP address. In this case, it's the same. So I just enter it. And after that, it says enter your nickname. In this case, I'll put Mr. Bean. And now you can see here, it says Sam Codes has joined. And if you go to the server side, you'll see it says Mr. Bean has joined. So right now, if Mr. Bean writes a message, it says, hello. You can see right here. Okay, this is another error. This should not be a dot. It should be a comma like this. So now we have to cancel everything. So make sure you put a comma and not a dot right there. Let's run it again. We'll say Sam Codes. The client side. Run it. Put the IP address first. And then we'll say Mr. Bean. So it says here Sam Codes has joined. Mr. Bean has connected. And then what we do next is that Mr. Bean says hello. So it says here me, hello. In this case, it's going to say Sam Codes hello. So if Mr. Bean writes something, hi, it says me, hi. And in this case, it says Mr. Bean says hi. So we can see that it's working out well. So yeah, guys, that's basically we created our chat room using Python and using this modules like socket and sys and also time. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like. We really appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And you know what? I'm gonna wrap this up and I'll see you all in the next video.